There's one piece of trash advice that is driving me bananas, and that is just make your AI sound like you. This is what you need to do to make your AI sound like you. And I bet you have seen it because my ChatGPT still spits it out at me, even though I tell it how trash that advice is on a regular basis. Let's dive in. So I want to preface this by saying it is trash advice, not because you aren't a lovely person with lots of great things to say, but because brand voice is actually something that is very strategically done to move your marketing forward. It is not the same thing as who you are as a person. And if you are somebody with a personal brand, check out that episode because I talk about why you are not your personal brand. They're actually two separate things, but essentially your personal brand is a character that you create, right? You're sharing all of the things that are going to be helpful for a potential client, like your approach, your experience, what offers you have, how you can help people, all of that fun stuff. But the idea of like something sounding like you, it has a lot of missing pieces. And so let's break down what is the actual strategy behind it. So voice is made up of three different pieces. The first one is cadence. So that's going to be like how fast you talk, how slow you talk. I know I am somebody that has a little bit of a fast cadence, but it also is going to show up in the way that you write. So when it comes to writing copy, are you writing a lot of really short, choppy sentences? Are you writing these long, elaborate, fluffy, beautifully worded, flowery sentences? And it's not that there's a right or wrong, but what you want to look for is some variance. So you're not always doing the same thing, and you can switch up your cadence depending on like the context of what's going on. But essentially, like, you want to keep it interesting because if you just talked in long, flowery sentences, people are going to get bored of reading that. And if you just do like short, choppy sentences, people are also going to get bored of reading this. That's one way that you can vary your copy to make it more intriguing and still sound on brand. Then you have tone. And so tone is going to shift depending on your context. So your voice, your message is going to stay the same, but your tone is going to shift. So maybe you are talking about a big milestone in your business and you are super excited. So maybe you're going to be a little bit more cheerful and excited in an email versus in an email that you were talking about how you have to raise your prices, and that's going to have a different tone. But throughout everything that you're doing, it's still going to be on brand. It's not going to be like somebody gets your email and they're like, oh, wait, this doesn't sound anything like what I expect it to sound like, right? That's where you're going to be breaking trust with people, and that's what's going to hurt your marketing. And the last piece of voice to consider is vocabulary. And this is really like, what words do you use? And so there's a lot to think about when it comes to vocabulary. Sometimes you think about regional vocabulary, like where you are, like soda versus pop. In a Slack group that I'm in, we were talking about like camp versus cottage and how different regions use different words for the same thing. And I think that the one thing that people struggle with the most, at least in my client circles, is sometimes people are like so well educated and so smart and have so much to offer. And so they use all these big jargony words. And so what you want to do really is to use fifth grade vocabulary. And I know that sounds like too simple or like you're talking down to people, but at the end of the day, people don't want to read an academic essay when they are reading their emails or looking at your website. They just want the most clear, concise information that you can get as possible. So those are three things: cadence, tone, and vocabulary. And they shift, right? Depending on what your purpose is, what you're talking about. This is like such a technical copywriting lesson, but I love it. But the thing is, like, even though it might sound a little bit overcomplicated, you already do this in your real life, right? So like when you are thinking about how you talk to your best friend versus how you talk to a colleague at work, like they are probably not going to be the same types of conversations. Yes, you are still you, right? But how you text your sister is not going to be the same thing as how you email a client, right? you have to code switch, right? You shift your tone, you shift the vocabulary, you shift your cadence based on the context. Branding is the same way, right? Like your brand character, your personal brand, your brand voice, right? That's going to be consistent, but then you adapt it depending on where you're showing up, who you're talking to, or what the situation is. And so I think where people get super tripped up is they try to separate messaging and voice like they are two different things, but they are very, very, very intertwined and really at the heart of copywriting. Like I talk so much about messaging and I don't really ever talk about voice, but basically messaging is what you're saying and the voice is how you're saying it. An example could be like, you don't have to do this alone. If you are more of a mentor friend, you might be like, hey, I've been there. This is what I've experienced. Here's how I approached it. And here's why I would recommend approaching it in this way. You can also have the bestie voice that's like, girl, why are you always trying to do everything alone? Like, I've been there. You don't need to do it alone. This is how to approach it, right? Same message, different voice. That was very not on brand for me. I definitely have the teacher voice. That is definitely my brand voice. But my point is, right, like the message is staying the same, but the voice and the tone is shifting. And so that is what drives me so crazy about this advice of like, sounds like you're taking your voice, sure. But if you don't have voice plus message, it's not going to work, right? If your message isn't clear, no amount of like voice or personality is going to save your message. And then if your voice isn't clear, even the best message isn't going to work if you are talking to people in the wrong way, right? Like if you are trying to present yourself as super compassionate and kind, but then you are, being really sassy, like it's probably going to like rub people the wrong way. Not that there's anything wrong with being sassy, but people usually resonate with a brand for a reason. And so that's really where you think about like, who am I talking to? How do they like being talked to? How can I approach this in a way that's like true to me, right? Like true to how I want to run my business, but also strategic where it's actually going to be helpful and move the needle in my business. And so that's really where like messaging and voice really, really work together because your messaging is the what, right? Like it gives your brand that foundation, what you're saying. And then your voice is where you can incorporate you. And gosh, Chat GPT cannot be you. You are the only person that has your experiences, your brain, your knowledge. And so if you want your AI to be encompassing that, to bring in your voice, you need to prompt it with those things. And where AI gets it wrong is because it doesn't know who you are, right? And so it's giving you this really generic content that anybody else who does what you do is also going to get that same content. But if you prompt it and say, hey, here's my voice and here's my message and here's my goal, then what you are going to get out of that is going to be much better than saying like, hey, write me an email or like create my next month's content calendar. Like that's not going to be helpful for your people because I bet you somebody who does what you do is also inputting that same thing into ChatGPT. And so I think the problem with sounds like you, it basically like one, it doesn't sound like you because you are this like whole human. And when you show up in your business, it's not all of you. It is your professional life and that is not your whole identity. So I think that's one of the things that is really irking me about this. But the other piece is that there's a lot of layers and a lot of depth to voice and to messaging. And that depth is really what connects with people because it shows like, hey, this person has put thought into this. This person has really worked hard on this, right? It's really what's going to set the foundation for you. So like, you don't feel like you have to show up and share all of yourself in your business, but instead you're curating a strategic version of you and your voice and your brand that is consistent. And of course, yes, you can adapt your tone based on where you are, But ultimately, it's coming back to your strategy, and you're starting with your strategy. And that doesn't mean like, when I'm talking about like being super strategic, it doesn't mean you lose the human element of it, because while my brand is very strategic and it does what it needs to do, it brings people in. What really, really moves the needle after I get people into my world is those relationships that I'm building. And then it's a little bit easier to show up with purpose, right? Because you're not trying to like show up and throw up your whole personality on your social media. Like, no, you are being strategic about what you're sharing. You don't need to overshare. You don't need to burn yourself out, trying to sound like yourself everywhere that you go and like sharing about all of the things you don't necessarily need to share about. If it is not related to your business, you do not have to share about it. I mean, you don't have to share about your business either way, but you probably won't make so much money. So really, when you see this advice of sounding like you, it is not about sounding like you as a human. It is about curating a recognizable brand that communicates what your message is, what your story is, what's your experience, what's your approach, what's your expertise. And so people build that trust with you. People understand what you do and how you can help them before they get on a call with you. And then you can use those one-on-one moments to build relationships with people. And so if you want help thinking about brand voice and brand message, that's exactly what we work on inside Brand Project. If you like this episode, share with a business friend. Don't forget to subscribe. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time. That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to rate and leave a review on your preferred listening platform. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe for weekly episodes about how to make money and work with the dreamiest of clients without having to get dressed in the morning. Make sure to check out the show notes down below, and I'll see you in the next episode.